I'm Dave Snyder.
And I'm Helen.
Embracing Unity was formed as a small group experience to help move our local church towards genuine multi-ethnic unity.
As Jesus followers, we were committed to building racial unity inside of the church. And if people on the outside saw us doing that, they would say, hey, that's Jesus at work.
As we were becoming racially diverse, I thought we were achieving racial unity.
I was feeling hesitation and heaviness at heart towards my white brothers and sisters. And my perspective was that they really didn't care what I thought.
I was completely unaware of how Helen was feeling. But when they were looking for elders to go to our denomination's national convention, I felt God was telling me that if Helen went, I needed to go and sit next to her and see how she experienced the event.
I definitely went with hesitation. My reservation was the experience I had a few years previous. I was praying for a change of heart, more diversity, but what I found was some diversity, but the status quo was continuing.
When I got there, I signed up for all the multi-ethnic breakout sessions, and at the end of the first session, they asked for questions, and
I said I was from College Hill Presbyterian Church, where 50-50, it was a 50-50 split between black and white. But really only 2 out of 15 elders were black.
And I feel compelled to share that I go to a church that's 92% white and 8% black, and isn't it a coincidence that the name of my church is the same name as Helen's church? No, I didn't say that, but I'm thinking that. And afterwards, we're in the hallway, I grab Helen, we start to talk, we grab her lunch, we find a quiet corner, and as we talk...
And I tell Dave that every elder of color I spoke with expressed the same thing, that they feel like they have not been heard.
This isn't Helen's story to share, and now it's not my story to share. That night I'm laying in bed, I should be sleeping, and I'm realizing helping others feel heard isn't my top priority. Getting to the right solution, finishing board meetings on time, those are high priorities for me. Helping others feel heard is secondary. In Module 2, we talk about the importance of empathy in discussions on race. Looking back now, I realize I didn't have that empathy. 2 weeks later, we're back in Cincinnati in our church's board meeting, and an elder makes a motion to reduce the size of the board from 15 to 9.
So I raised my hand because I'm concerned about how this will impact people of color and their representation of the church. And I'm told, no, that's a separate issue. And 3 times I'm trying to raise my hand and say this, and I'm rebuffed all those times.
So I raise my hand and say I have a question. And I'm told, no, that's a separate issue. We'll deal with that separately. That night I'm laying in bed, I should be sleeping, and I'm thinking, ouch, that stung a little bit. It's been a couple decades since I felt like a woman told me, sit down, shut up, it's not your turn to talk. Now I've got the empathy, but I'm not sure what to do. But I do sense that God's calling me to start initiating conversations of race on our monthly board meetings. We're becoming a multi-ethnic church, and race touches everything. Yet we are unable to have those discussions. As I start initiating these discussions, it becomes uncomfortable for everyone involved.
Oh yes, there was a strong resistance to engaging in conversations about race.
I make a motion that we be deliberate about raising up elders of color. There's an immediate gut reaction in the room. Elders say, we don't need to be deliberate about raising up elders of color. I don't see color.
But when all of the leaders are of the dominant culture, there will be blind spots. And that's what the early church experienced in Acts 6.
And one elder said, why do we keep talking about building cultural intelligence? There's only one culture that matters. That's biblical culture.
Biblical culture from a white perspective, black perspective, Asian perspective, Latino perspective. No, what they're really saying is, we want you to assimilate to white culture.
Monoethnic thinking was a defining sin of the early church. It required an all-church council to resolve. As we got into discussions on race, we realized that the American church still struggles to overcome racial hierarchies within the church, even though most of us don't realize that these hierarchies exist. At one of our board meetings, an elder says, "I keep hearing this phrase, I feel like I'm not being heard, and I'm wondering if they've been heard, but they just didn't like the outcome of the decision." I remind this elder that 4 months earlier, Helen expressed that she had concerns. And we still don't know what those concerns were because none of us have asked and listened. I now feel compelled to act. I invite 5 elders and deacons of color over for lunch. I include our senior pastor and this elder. And I ask them, "How are you experiencing our church?" And for 3 hours, we sit and listen to stories of perceived racism. Each of them expresses that it's been hard to be a part of our church and that they've stayed only because they feel called to be a part of our body. My gut reaction when I hear these stories is that we can't know a person's motives. There might be a reasonable explanation for what my black congregants are experiencing other than racism. But I realize that our black congregants are experiencing our church differently than our white congregants. That's a problem. And even if it's just that our black congregants have a perception that they're experiencing our church differently, we've got something that we need to be talking about.
That lunch in your home was not only welcoming, but it was so important and empowering. We were intentional about sitting down and talking about the elephant that was in the room. And with that, we were able to kind of use those conversations to form what is now called Embracing Unity.
Hearing these stories was transformational for me. I knew that there was racial disparity in the local community, but as a white evangelical, I'd been taught that the root cause was black people making poor choices. And when I realized that we were experiencing life differently based on skin color within my own church, that awakened me to a problem that I'd been blind to.
We invite you to use our small group experience in your own church.
And we invite you to join our Facebook group. It's a conversation where like-minded people can share their successes and challenges with each other and learn from each other. And we've also started collecting essays on our webpage of the biblical perspective of building unity.
And these essays can be shared with others.
We want to pull into this discussion Christians that are currently uncomfortable with conversations on race. These individuals can't lead the discussion, but we need them on the bus if we're going to arrive there together. Remember, we don't do this because we're politically correct or because we've been influenced by popular culture. We do this because this is central to what God is doing, and He wants us to join Him in His work.
We equip Christians to talk race, to build church unity, and put things right in our communities. We invite you to join our Facebook discussion group or attend our free academy.